Well, good morning and welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder, and this is BRN AM for Tuesday, July 14th, 2020. And here are our top stories: best practices for digital financial services, and could digital payments ease airline pain? Joining me now to discuss this and more is Daniel Klein. He's Senior Technology and Consumer Products Reporter with The Motley Fool. Dan, welcome back to the program. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Hey there, Jeff. Good to be here. I've got an extra shot of espresso this morning, so ready to go.
All right. Well, we're going to expect, I guess, a quick segment, right? Because you'll be speaking at 1.5 times normal speed. Dan, let's jump in because I recently read a white paper about best practices for digital financial services, and Dan, this could be more of an important time, right, to do that. We've got people spread all around the globe who are social distancing. Maybe some are getting back to work. For the most part, a lot of us are transacting business online through virtual tools like Skype and Zoom, et cetera. Give us some of your thoughts around some of these best practices for digital financial services.
So, Jeff, I'm amazed at how far behind the times traditional banks are. Banks are based on this outdated notion that you're going to walk to the bank with your paycheck, you're going to fill out a little slip, you're going to hand it to someone, and then they're going to put it in a pneumatic tube that shoots it somewhere. They may not still use the pneumatic tube, but every other part of that is accurate. That's how a lot of banking occurs. And right now, that makes no sense. But of course, when you look at PayPal, Venmo, products like that, which are the same company, and the ability to move money around, Apple Pay, like right in your text messaging, you could send money to your friends. Redeeming that money isn't as easy as it should be, but it's solvable. And this is one of those scenarios where I think banks were resting on their laurels on the idea that just customers had a routine and that's how they're going to do it. So now they have to figure out, wait a minute, that routine is disrupted. People don't want to come into banks. How are we going to handle it? The first thing they have to figure out, Jeff, is when you're doing something in the bank, now a deposit, if someone wants to deposit money into my account, the bank doesn't care if it's me. That's not important. Your wife can drop off your deposit envelope as long as everything's filled out. It's no big deal because they're putting money into your account. If they're doing that nefariously, that's a really terrible crime. But if you want to take money out or move money around, it's really important your bank figure out who you are. And what they're working on now is what's the best practice to do that? How do I know that Jeff is Jeff and it's not, somebody that's, stolen Jeff's face or his password or whatever identification?
Yeah, Dan, I was going to say two-factor authentication is obviously a big. I mean, when banks use that today. We've got the iPhone voice recognition or facial recognition. Excuse me. I mean, are you kind of heading down that path where you think that, or are you talking about something more where maybe you use your thumb, or it's a combination of all three in order to validate you are who you are?
So I think right now it could be pretty frustrating. I'm sure you've struggled with two-factor authentication. We use Okta here at the Motley Fool, and occasionally I realize I'm on a plane and I can't use my phone to verify myself. And there are other things. I do my payroll, which is just me, but I do my payroll and it requires two-factor authentication. And for some reason, it will not recognize my device as the same device I always do payroll on. So every time I process payroll, I have to do 3 of those. It sends you a text message and you type in the code, and because it's phone to computer, it doesn't automatically populate. It adds like 5 minutes to the process. That stuff has to get better. I assume facial recognition and fingerprinting will become much more common and part of the process.
I want to go back to something you said earlier about the banks and not changing. And we're going to talk about the travel industry in the next segment, but is it just, maybe it's not that they weren't prepared, but it's often hard to move big organizations, especially big banks or bureaucracies like government, right? Hard to navigate, hard to get to the next place, hard to innovate. And maybe it takes buying an outside company. You see a lot of this with financial services firms in the mutual fund space. They go out, in retirement space, they go out and buy companies and plug them in. Is it just a case where it just is unwieldy? It's hard to steer. You have to go out and, case in point, Chase. I use Chase as a banking institution. I'm able to take a picture now of my check and deposit it. I'm able to send money like I can do on Venmo through Zelle. But is it a fact that these banks, these institutions will bolt things on going forward and just go out and purchase companies rather than develop things in-house?
So they'll certainly be doing that. They'll also be partnering with some of those, successful companies. But one of the hardest things to do is to disrupt yourself. So
Yeah.
I think every big company, and this is a pitch I'm going to make at my company. I think, and we're not that big a company, but I think every big company should have a team internally where they bring in some startup people and some people that know the industry. Just 4 or 5 people, bring in resources as needed. And their goal is, how do we build the product that's going to disrupt our business? So you look at the rise of Netflix. If Blockbuster, in any of the 5 years before Netflix became a thing, even just the DVD delivery part of it, had moved strongly into that area and gone into streaming much earlier, there'd be no Netflix. They had a systemic advantage in terms of, they owned a lot of DVDs. Would it be really easy for them to have done that early part of Netflix, the DVD delivery? So if you look at banks, did they go out and say, geesh, like I have a Wells Fargo account, and Wells Fargo uses Zelle. I think that's the payment, digital payment thing. And in theory, people use it. Nobody uses Zelle. Everybody uses Venmo or PayPal.
Yeah.
And they were beaten to the punch. Now, if they could have launched that earlier, it's the same with, look, Disney has good enough intellectual property that Disney Plus can catch up. They're probably the only one that can say that. All these products that are coming, like HBO Max and NBC Peacock, I think they're going to struggle really hard. But if they'd launched before Netflix, they'd be winning. The banks didn't even have to do as good a job as PayPal and Square if they'd been first, because they already had the customer. Some things like depositing a check on your phone are harder than they need to be. It's still not particularly accurate. I will give Wells Fargo credit. It's gotten much faster. It's almost instant, whereas it used to take a couple of days. But that should be super simple. I still have no idea on the Wells Fargo app how to order a certified check. I have to go to their website. And last time I did it, I ended up getting 3 certified checks of the same check, and I had to bring 2 of them back and redeposit them into my own account, which was sort of tricky. Things like this are broken. We've talked before. I'm a Capital One customer, and I use their Sparks business account, which is supposed to be a digital first account. First of all, because it's a digital first account, they won't help me when I walk into their branch, which is absurd. You should never turn a customer aside when they're asking for help. But it no longer has an app. It's a digital product where I have to use the old login and go to a website. That's clumsy. This needs fixing, and I think banks maybe finally take the threat seriously. We saw Deutsche Bank this week partner with Google to figure some of this stuff out. But the cat's out of the bag. The horses are out of the barn. You're not going to catch up with Venmo. You are not going to catch up with PayPal. You're not going to catch up with Square on the payment side, but you do have to take steps to serve your existing customers. Look, big businesses aren't going to stop dealing with big banks, and they're going to need every digital tool available.
And let's not forget the young entrepreneurs who are starting startups to disrupt that, right? You got digital payments, et cetera. It's going to be really an interesting time. And I get what you're saying about self-cannibalization, really important. Dan, I want to hold you over. When we come back, we're going to shift gears to talk about the travel industry. Obviously, there's some changes there when it comes to digital payments that we'll talk about as well. So stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms? Especially for the smaller businesses. I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
The windows on our homes, they protect us and the ones we love, but they do much more. At Renewal by Andersen, making your home more comfortable is at the center of every window we make. It's why we custom build our windows in America and install them in as little as 1 day. It's why we build our frames with exclusive Fibrex composite material that's 2 times stronger than vinyl. It's why our glass helps keep your home warmer in winter, cooler in summer, and quieter all year long. It's why we stand behind every window with a 20-year limited warranty. Why not help lower your energy costs while giving your home and family the best? Call 1-800-835-6525 to schedule a free in-home consultation. Buy one, get one at 40% off with this special offer. Plus, get special financing with no money down, no monthly payments, and no interest for 1 full year. Renewal by Andersen, the better way to a better window. Call 1-800-835-6525 now.
Welcome back. We're talking to Daniel Klein, Senior Technology and Consumer Products Reporter with The Motley Fool. Dan, thanks so much for staying with us this morning.
Thanks for keeping me.
Yeah, it's great to have you, and a really interesting conversation on the evolution in the digital space when it comes to payments. Let's talk about travel, because travel is another industry which obviously significantly impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic globally, really depressed some of those stock values, people not traveling. But I've been reading about now Expedia saying that they're willing to accept cryptocurrency as an example of the evolution that is occurring within the travel industry. What can you tell us here?
So that feels a little gimmicky to me. That feels like when Domino's comes out and says, oh, you can now order by sending us a pizza emoji. And it's like, well, I could do that, but what am I going to get? Are you going to bring me just a slice? Are you going to bring me a pizza? Are you going to bring me 10 pizzas? How is cryptocurrency valued? This is a pretty, they can move a lot in a day. Which cryptocurrencies do you take? There was a pizza place in Cambridge, Mass. that took cryptocurrency and had a cryptocurrency ATM in the... But that's all gimmickry. But there is a pretty seismic change going on in the travel industry, and it relates in a lot of ways to what we talked about banks. I'll give a concrete example. The cruise industry has absolutely struggled to process refunds, to rebook trips that people want to take. I know Royal Caribbean, which I use a lot, they have a policy that if you have a canceled trip, you're allowed to move it into the same month a year from now on a similar itinerary. Mm-hmm. That sounds great, but when you call them up, there's like a 3-hour wait to try to do that, and they don't have a good automated system to handle that. Now, look, some of their system was built for the old reality. Here's how it works. People can't cancel. They can't move trips around. But a lot of that airlines, I mentioned to you earlier that I'm driving to South Carolina today because Southwest, not negatively, but they changed my itinerary in a way that I almost certainly would have missed my connecting flight in Atlanta. I had a 20-minute layover, and Atlanta's a gigantic airport.
Yeah,
so it would have
huge.
Now, maybe we get there early, maybe the flight's late, but chances are I would have missed it because you always land at A1 and are taking off from Z55, and you have to take like a tram and a helicopter and a camel to get. That's a terrible, terrible airport. But that said, the other alternative was waiting 5 or 6 hours. Now, I was flying Fort Lauderdale to Greenville, South Carolina. That is not a hot traffic route that they need to be staffing. I normally fly Delta direct out of West Palm for that because it's a really budget flight. In this case, I looked at it and went, I should just drive. Now, Southwest should have offered me better solutions. They should have come back to me and said, here's what we're doing, and here are your options. You can take this flight and have a 5-hour layover, or what if we flew you to Charlotte and offered you a rental car for, you're only going for 2 days. We'll give you, here's a deal on a rental car. We're partnered with these companies. So instead of the $60 it would cost you a day to rent out of Charlotte, which for some reason is an expensive rental car market, we'll get you one for $20 a day. You're 3 hours from your destination, but we've saved you 5 hours of transit. Or could you fly into, and there's a couple of other airports in that area. They don't have the digital wherewithal to do that. They just managed to add to their app showing you how much credit you have. Previously, you had to keep track of it on paper or call them up with canceled flight numbers, and it was very unwieldy. But I think you're going to see a massive change in how airlines, how the travel industry does everything, because customers are going to demand optionality in a way that they never did, at least until this is very far behind us.
Dan, we talked about Disney kind of reopening its theme parks on the podcast on Sunday. And are they, how they're allowing people to pre-buy tickets, right? There's a whole strategy that you outlined on the podcast, and we've had others do as well, where they're going to be allowing people to reserve and things like that. Is that kind of the future? Are you going to see, because when I think of travel, I'm not only thinking about airlines, and I'm thinking about hotels. I'm thinking about, you mentioned Royal Caribbean, I'm thinking about the cruise lines, I'm thinking about theme parks. They're all going to have to adapt how they take payments, how they book reservations. All these things are going to change dramatically in a post-COVID world, and probably would have changed naturally over time had we not had this pandemic.
So Disney was moving towards a cashless world anyway. If you were staying on property, it was pretty easy to be cashless. If you weren't, you could do things like non-contact, like Apple Pay, but you can't tie in food purchases on your phone or your Magic Band, though they appear to be phasing out the Magic Band in favor of everything being phone-based. And yeah, cruise lines are generally no cash anyway. You put a credit card on file, everything is charged to your room. Some people prefer to use cash, so they'll literally go to the desk with a pile of cash, put that in their system, but you can't use cash. You walk up to the bar in a cruise ship, there's no cash register. I mean, there's a cash register, but it doesn't take cash, so it's just a register to record the purchases and put the slips in. And maybe some people are using cash tips, but that's probably just going in a glass anyway. So yeah, we're absolutely rapidly moving towards that world. In the short term, things like hotels. There's a Club Med about 45 minutes down the road here in Port St. Lucie, and it's a bunch of pools and beaches and bars and restaurants, and it sounds lovely. And I'm sure they're operating at limited capacity, not letting you move pool chairs, so you can sit with your group, but not, with others, trying to enforce social distancing, limiting capacities in pools and things like that. And they can manage that simply by only selling half their rooms. The casino I'm headed to is at 30% capacity. They're obviously not bucking up against that capacity because they comped me. So if they're willing to let me go for free, that means the demand isn't that high. Disney was the other scenario. It was actually pretty difficult to get a Disney reservation. And what I'm curious about is, will it work like Fast Passes did back when that was a thing, where some people make the reservation, but they don't intend to go. And on the day of, some reservations will open up. And they're also opening at very tight capacity it's still the summer, so there's very high demand from locals. I don't think people are going to take their traditional Disney vacation unless the deals are really, really good. And I think that's going to be true of a lot of vacations. I intend to be on a cruise ship as soon as it's safe to be on a cruise ship. And the cruise industry has just hired some really high-level doctors to figure that out. But those are going to be cruises with 30% capacity, with masks on, with other distancing measures. That's fine for someone who lives 45 minutes from the port and is willing to take a modified cruise experience. That's not going to make it make sense for you to fly down here to Florida with your family to spend your vacation money for not the full experience. So the travel industry, the vacation industry is going to struggle, but this is going to force a lot of things. Look, do I wish cruise lines had upgraded, filtration before this to make sure the air was as clean as possible? Sure, that sounds great, even though I do fully believe cruise lines have been at the forefront of keeping things clean.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, I think we're going to get to a point at some point when it comes to payments that we're all going to blink like Barbara Eden did on I Dream of Jeannie and just grant payments. I think that's kind of where things are headed. Dan, always a pleasure chatting with you. Great to see you. We'll talk to you again later this week.
I'll see you later this week.
And that wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Have a topic of interest or someone you think we should talk to? Drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the news in retirement, markets, technology, personal finance, and more, check out today's edition of The Morning Pulse. So until tomorrow, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.
Attention! The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services has officially authorized new benefits that Medicare Advantage plans may include. To get the benefits you deserve, you can call the Medicare Coverage Helpline.
Hi, I'm Joe Namath. If you're on Medicare, this is important information. I called the Medicare Coverage Helpline and they instantly looked up my coverage. In this one simple call, they offered to enroll me in a plan that includes rides to medical appointments, private home aides, doctors and nurses' visits by telephone, and even home-delivered meals. The plan also includes dental, vision, hearing, and prescription drug coverage, all at no additional cost.
Don't delay. Call to see if the new benefits are available in your area.
Call the number on your screen now. It's free.
Call 1-800-757-1451. That's 1-800-757-1451.